Welcome, friends. This is Derek from TCI. We're in Kapolei on the west side of Oahu, and it's a beautiful day here for us to make another. Let's get into the business here and take a look at the network that we need to fix. It's behind these white cabinets. You wouldn't know it by looking, but these are residential media cabinets. They're not supposed to be used in a commercial environment. Normally, you see these inside of a garage or a hallway in a condo or other residence. This is where, in a residence, you put all of your internet connections and your Wi-Fi controller, your router, etc., and maybe one other device like a NAS. They're very shallow, only 3 inches deep. They were never meant to hold a 24-port switch or one of these 1500 VA UPSs. We're going to need to move all of this to a completely different area and set up a proper cabinet. Let's get the things out of the van and get everything onto the site so we can start rescuing this network. We've brought along with us a network cabinet that's 12U in size. It also has a patch panel, a shelf, and a cable manager to help us build this out properly. I've also not had a chance to examine the ceiling thoroughly, so we've brought enough cable to run 24 extensions from the old panel to the new cabinet. Real quick interlude before we dive into this video. A lot of times people ask me, what do we do if the cables from one cabinet do not reach the new cabinet? What do we do then? So here's a typical example of the scenario that we're going to run into. I've drawn an old cabinet and a new cabinet. There are existing wires from computers out in the field that plug into the old cabinet. Some of them have long cables because they're very far from the old cabinet. Some of them have short cables, which are these. They're much closer to the old cabinet. If I want to move everything to the new cabinet, many of the long cables I can simply redirect. So it's a simple matter to just take the long ends, unpatch them from the existing old panel, and move them to the new panel. But what do we do about these shorties? Well, if you look here, I'm going to extend from one to the other. And the way that I do that is I run a bunch of short Cat6s between these two cabinets. So that'll be between here. What I then do is I take these shorties and I patch them into that panel, which then artificially extends it to the new panel, and then we can patch into a switch that we may have. I'm able to eliminate this old cabinet entirely. What I'll do is take all of this stuff that I'm trying to use as an extension, and I'll leave it in the ceiling. So here's a version of what I do when I don't have enough length on the Cat6 that I need to move. This is exactly what we'll be doing in the video, so I hope it makes more sense with a little bit of pre-explanation. The spot for the new cabinet that the client has picked out is not terribly far from these media cabinets, so the extensions will be short. However, just glancing at the ceiling does not inspire confidence in there being any kind of useful service loop. So I'm expecting to need to run every single cable that I find here in this cabinet again. However, we're going to crack the ceiling and take a look around. Maybe we can do something with some of the existing wires. Upon examination, there's not a great service loop here. However, we're in some luck in that there appears to be a bit of a cable highway running down the hall. The bulk of these wires look like they could be salvaged and just simply redirected to the new network cabinet. I'm still going to run about a dozen cables from the media cabinet to the new wall cabinet in order to salvage the ones that are too short. In order to work efficiently, the team splits up into 2 groups. Jeff will handle the media cabinets. He's going to identify these cables and get them ready for pulling. The other team is going to mount the wall cabinet and the patch panel, and they're going to cut a ceiling interface. If we work together, we can get this done a lot faster. Kaysen and John here put some stabilizing screws for this plywood backer board, while Jeff is working out a pathway along the ceiling to reach this new location. It only takes a moment with the stud finder to find the metal studs. In addition to the stud screws, we'll put in a couple of toggle bolts through these pre-drilled holes. This gives us just a little bit more grip and shearing force protection. While the backer board is being made ready, Jeff is going through the ceiling and he's loosening all of the anchors, zip ties, and Velcro that are holding this cable bundle up. We're going to pull backwards once we're ready to feed everything into the new cabinet. Not all of these cables are salvageable, but it looks like we'll get about 2/3 of them in one single pull, which is quite nice and a good time saver. This is Boat. For the cables that cannot be salvaged from the old media cabinet because they are too short, he will length out extensions that are meant to go from the old cabinet to the new. He does this while the backboard is being put up and while we're working out the path in the ceiling. Again, we're trying to work efficiently and get out of here as fast as we can. With the plywood backer board up on the wall and secure, it's time to work out how we'd like to place the wall cabinet. This one uses a cleat, so if we measure carefully and make sure that we don't have the cleat too far to the left or right of the plywood, we should be able to avoid having the door strike our cabinet when the door is fully opened. It's an unfortunate spot, but the counter does provide us a little bit of protection. If you look closely here, the cleat is up pretty high, meaning that the wall cabinet will be very close to the ceiling, which presents a challenge for the ceiling interface that we can use. We're not able to use a pipe here like we normally do because we don't have enough clearance. So I'm going to use one of these blue fire stop sleeves and put it right through the ceiling tile. We'll be drawing an outline around the fire stop sleeve in order to make that cut. Then the ceiling tile is brought down out of the ceiling and placed over a trash can. You have to carefully cut these ceiling tiles because they'll suddenly give way. They're mostly made of recycled cardboard and other mush with a thin layer of glue. It doesn't take much to shatter this into pieces. So I recommend, if you've not done this before, just score the surface of the ceiling tile once, then again, and slowly go deeper with your knife through the material until it gives way all as a single piece. Be very careful that you don't get frustrated or that the blade doesn't suddenly release and go all the way through this material. You'd be shocked how quickly you're holding 2 pieces of ceiling tile instead of 1. Once the sleeve is through the ceiling tile, just a couple of screws and washers will hold it into place. As you can imagine, it cannot hold any weight. So something in the ceiling must be the anchor for the cable bundle, or we're just going to have this entire thing rip out of the ceiling if we get sloppy and let anything rest on it. The cleat is quite stiff and is able to support the weight of the entire cabinet without much issue. However, I don't think I really want to trust my whole network life to just those 4 screws. So with this cabinet on the wall, there's going to be a few extra screws that we use to secure it just a little bit more, just in case. While that was happening, Boat was able to finish lengthening out, labeling, and then looping the extension cords that we need to run to the other side. So what we're going to do is tape them on to a fishing rod, bring that fishing rod through the ceiling, then grab it at the media cabinets so that we can bring down all the Cat 6 that we need to act as extensions for the cables that are too short to reach the new wall cabinet. Both sides of the extensions will be terminated on panels. In the midst of this project, we did find a little bit of side work to do. These white wires that are hanging are for the camera system. The security box is sitting on this cabinet right here, and the cables are just run down the wall. And I just can't look at this another minute. So one of the things that we're going to do is cut them a brand new hole and put all these wires through a brush plate directly into the back of the security device. It takes a little bit of fishing with some rods to get through the insulation, but once we've got the stick through, it's a simple matter of taping the white wires on and pulling them down the wall. It looks 1,000% better. Okay, on with the rest of the project. As is standard practice for us, Jeff has spent some time labeling each of the Cat6 cables with a Sharpie so that we know where they were plugged into the switch. That gives us the opportunity to finally begin disconnecting these patch cords from the switch, pulling them up through the ceiling, and then setting them aside for redirection. We're going to bundle as many together as we can and then pull them backwards through the ceiling to the hallway and then pull them forwards to the brand new cabinet that we just put up. We've emptied the cabinet of all the important items like the switch and firewall. This modem is going to stay behind. The internet service it's providing is going to be canceled in just a couple of days, so we don't need to move this. With everything else out of the way, we can now focus on bringing our bundle through the ceiling to the new cabinet. However, I'm going to try to leave the RJ45 connectors on in order to minimize how much work we have to do when we get to the other side. But as you know, the tabs on an RJ45 get caught up on everything. So we're going to wrap a bag around the entire bundle so that the tabs don't get hung up on every little thing in the ceiling. It's a relatively smooth pull through the hallway in order to reach the new wall cabinet. There's only a couple of short cables that we encounter along the way that we weren't expecting. Those get rerun. The rest of them come through the fire stop sleeve and are going to be put into the patch panel here. In order to save us some time, I've got coupler keystones. These slot into the patch panel, and then the RJ45s plug in on the rear of them, and then you can patch into the switch on the front of them. This saves us the effort of having to re-terminate everything. If during testing we find that some of these are bad, we're going to end up redoing the keystone anyway. But for the most part, this will save a lot of labor. With the cables successfully brought over and patched in, we can now see activity lights, which is very gratifying after a move like that. It's at this stage that we go around the client's office and check every single computer, printer, and wireless device to make sure that we didn't screw up any of these. We do, in fact, find a couple of bad ones in the process. They must have been damaged when we were pulling through the ceiling. This does happen. Those get re-terminated. The media cabinets get reorganized just a little bit, with the small patch panel here being locked down. All of the power cords are moved to the in-media cabinet outlet, and then we simply shut the door. This is done. At the new cabinet side, we confirm that everything is rolled up and closed. This is also done. The IT staff are going to follow us tomorrow, and what they're going to do is put in a UPS, new switch, new internet service, and new router, which means our work is done here. All that remains is to clean up our mess, put the desks back the way they were, and bid farewell to this client. We're going to grab some lunch here and head on to the next job. Until we see you again, happy network building.